Good morning, everyone. My name is Trace Rogers, and I want to welcome you to this webinar this morning, bright and early, for Boise time at least, at 6 a.m. And I really appreciate you sacrificing your day to spend a little bit of that with me. I will be doing a hands-on presentation and a demo of the TextBlade by WayTools, with a Q&A afterwards. This presentation is actually the first of 3 that I'm giving today, and I will cover the same material in all 3 demos. And I will be doing this demo specifically because on a forum that I participate in for the TextBlade, a pre-purchaser of a TextBlade who has not been a participant of the test or release group wanted more information about the TextBlade and asked if someone would do a demo. And I just decided why not. So over the last week, I've learned how to do presentations on Zoom. And so I hope that this will be a smooth presentation for you. And I'm hoping that this will provide additional information about the TextBlade. It is intended to cover numerous aspects of the TextBlade and show the workings of a non-public released TextBlade. And it's the one I've specifically been using over the last 2 years. The TextBlade, while not yet released to the public, is a versatile 3-piece Bluetooth keyboard, which size and usability rival many, if not all, keyboards that are fully functional on the market today. So let's begin by covering a few points. First, this is expected to be a 2-hour session. The demonstration and presentation should last about 90 minutes to an hour and 40 minutes. And it has been taking about an hour and 40 minutes for the demo and presentation. We'll follow the presentation with a Q&A session. During this presentation, please feel free to post any questions you might have inside the Zoom session. Either on the top or bottom of the Zoom window, you should see a Q&A button that you can click. Within that, you can post any questions you would like, and only I, as the presenter, can see the questions posed. And at the end of the presentation, I will go ahead and answer all of the Q&A questions that are presented to me, and then I will allow the participants, if they would like to actually ask me questions. I will be able to enable your audio so that you can ask me questions at the end. And then finally, this next week, I will be posting these recorded sessions to YouTube. I will post a single composite session that I will take of the best of each of the demonstrations, and then a complete list of all the Q&A so that we can have this on YouTube. And I will send a link to all participants of the presentation in advance of the public notification. So, topics for today's presentation. We're going to begin with some disclaimers. I think all presentations have some disclaimers. And then we'll cover a little bit of my background and my TextBlade and TREG history. And then we will go into talking about the TextBlade accessories that I use on a daily basis that have come very helpful to me. I will cover an initial overview of the TextBlade. We'll go into its look and feel and how things are presented and the questions I've received from users or from other people as they've seen me using my TextBlade. And then we'll go into the TextBlade app. A lot of the time will be spent in the TextBlade iOS app, and then demoing functionality on the TextBlade that I have, showing you exploring the sections of the iOS app, as well as the settings and the support section of the application. I'll then cover some of the issues I've had over the last 3.5 years. I've had the TextBlade, and go over some final thoughts, and then we'll go into the Q&A section. I will have some closing comments at the end of the presentation as well. So with that, let's go through some disclaimers. First, this presentation is not sponsored by WayTools. When the individual on the forum asked if someone could do a presentation, I did want to reach out to WayTools to make sure that the manufacturer would support and approve all of the topics I was going to discuss. Because I have signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, I wanted to make sure that I was not discussing anything beyond the NDA. While there were a few topics that WayTools did request that I not cover or not show, it was very minor and it shouldn't impact this presentation at all. Second, if the TextBlade was shipping today, I would highly recommend purchasing it. As a daily user of this device over the last 3.5 years, I can say that it is a extremely positive and it makes a significant impact to my workflow on a daily basis. I use it for all of my inputs for all the devices that I use every day. But in saying that, as of today, May 9th, 2020, I would not recommend someone who asked me today whether they should pre-purchase the TextBlade. Since the TextBlade was announced in 2015, it has been 5 years that has not yet been released. And for me as a consumer, I feel that while I love this device and I think that this device is an amazing product, because it hasn't shipped in 5 years after its announcement, I would wait until I see people posting on YouTube, customers receiving their TextBlades to ensure that the company has been shipping them to customers. And honestly, some customers, including myself, we prepaid for our TextBlades over 5 years ago, and we have yet to receive the purchased TextBlade. Even though I'm using a loaned TextBlade from WayTools, and I have been for the last 3.5 years, it is not my own TextBlade. I want my shiny TextBlade that's brand new that I can show to friends, and I can provide them and let them borrow it to see how they like it. Those are all things that I can't do, and that I can't do that 5 years after I pre-purchased the TextBlade. So while I'm a proponent of the TextBlade and I love this device, I wouldn't recommend pre-purchasing at this point, and I would recommend waiting until it is provided by WayTools to the population. So those are my disclaimers. Why am I doing this presentation? Someone asked if anyone could do a presentation, and I decided to take this opportunity to do this. I love the device, and I felt that I could share things that I've learned over the last years of its use, with hope that it will ship at some point to customers. So about me. I live in the beautiful city of Boise, Idaho in the United States, and I have lived here most of my life. I work at Micron Technology. It is the 3rd largest memory producer in the world, and it's headquartered here in Boise, Idaho. I'm a senior IT supply chain solutions architect and have been for some time, and I've really enjoyed my career that I've had at Micron over these past 24 years and enjoyed working in many different opportunities and spending time significantly over the past decade in Micron's supply chain, focusing on the long-term strategic planning for the company. I've been married for 26 years, all of which has been pretty much in Boise, and I have 4 teenage children. So let's talk about my TextBlade TREG or TREG history. Again, test release group history. In January 2015, I learned about the TextBlade. I was excited to find out that there was a device that was going to be purchasable by the consumer that was a significantly small Bluetooth keyboard that could connect to 6 unique devices for data entry. It was smaller than most mice, and at the time, when I had been already purchasing multiple keyboards, over $100 at the time for ergonomic keyboards, a $99 device seemed very reasonable to me. I was immediately intrigued by it, and when I found out that it was going to go on pre-sale on January 15th, 2015, I was interested in pre-purchasing it. The WayTools site at the time said that the TextBlade would be shipping in 1 to 3 months after the pre-purchasers began. And on January 15th, I actually forgot to log in to pre-purchase the device until after lunch. And I was extremely bummed because I thought I was going to lose my place in line to receive the TextBlade as early as possible. So about 2:30 in the afternoon, my time, I pre-purchased my first TextBlade on January 15th. Then I waited in anticipation for its arrival within the next couple of months. Over those couple of months, WayTools provided us information about the progress that they were making on the TextBlade. But as it progressed, spring came, then summer, and then fall of 2015. I believe sometime in 2016, springtime, WayTools announced that there would be a test release group, a TREG group program, to allow pre-purchasers, some pre-purchasers, to have a TextBlade loaned to them by WayTools to be a beta tester, to go through and exercise the TextBlade to make sure it would function properly in advance of the general release. I was really excited about doing that, and so I signed up as early as I could. I love testing things. I've been a beta tester for other devices, and so I eagerly signed up, and then I waited. It wasn't until September 2016 when WayTools reached out to me and asked whether I would still be interested in participating as a TREG user. I signed my NDA in September and received my first TextBlade then. As I found a few issues and had other problems, many of them ended up being my computer or user error, a few things that I happened, and actually a TextBlade or two that had some issues. I've actually received 8 unique TextBlades from WayTools over the first 18 months that I was a TREG participant. And most of those I sent back to WayTools as soon as I received the new unit. But my last TextBlade actually arrived February 2018, and that's the same unit that I'm using today. And because I was doing some testing with other TextBlades, I actually still have 2.5 TextBlades in my possession. And that's actually come in handy, and I will explain that later in the presentation. So let's go ahead and go talk about the TextBlade's accessories. So when I first received the TextBlade, the first thing I noticed was it's 3 pieces that are magnetically connected together. And as you can see here, they are not firmly connected. They flop around. And so I originally immediately noticed that I wanted to use my TextBlade on my lap. And to do that, I would need to have a hard surface to make that work. So I decided to build myself a lap desk. What I did was I purchased a large wood clipboard, and then I sized the clipboard to my work laptop because I knew I would be using that significantly during the usage of my TextBlade. And I wanted this to cover my work laptop so I could set my TextBlade on top of the lap desk and then use it on my laptop while I was working. So I went and purchased some fabric and some fabric tape, which you can see here bleeding through the fabric. And I created this lap desk. And I've used it consistently and heavily over the last 3.5 years. And you can tell that it's actually been very well used and abused. Then several years after that, I decided that I wanted to actually replace that lap desk with something new. So I bought the materials to make a new design lap desk, but it wasn't until 10 days ago that I actually created the new lap desk. Really, the main design difference was it's still a wood clipboard. It's still measured the same for my work laptop. But the difference of this lap desk is I used tacky spray as the adhesion for the wood. So I sprayed tacky spray on the wood, and then when I applied the wood to the fabric, it was significantly better at adhesion to the fabric, and it doesn't bleed through the fabric. and it really gives us nice, clean, solid surface. And so I created 2 of them, and that's what this is here as well. This is another one of the lap desks that I created about 10 days ago. So that's the very first accessory that I use on a consistent basis with my TextBlade. The next device accessory that I use is actually something that was provided to me by WayTools. WayTools, about a year in, came up with a lap desk of their own where it has a slot to be able to place an iPhone or an iPad, either in landscape or portrait mode, that actually has a counterbalance weighting within the lap desk to allow it so that it won't tip over, so that you can support it yourself on a lap, even in portrait mode on an iPad Pro, without it tipping over. It also has embedded magnets within the base so that the TextBlade here won't shift around as you lift it and move it around. And it has a nice material on it and provides a lot of use for me. And so anytime that I'm actually sitting at my couch or I'm not using my laptop, I'm pretty much using my TextBlade with that lap desk provided by WayTools. But due to an NDA, and because WayTools actually has not yet announced this lap desk, I'm not able to provide the name of the device. I was able only to speak of it, but I use it all the time with my TextBlade, and it will be a great additional accessory that people can purchase once the TextBlade goes on sale. Finally, when most people use their laptop and they're typing on their laptop, many times they're having to move over to the right to use their mouse, or they're reaching down to use their trackpad. Both of those situations reduce the productivity of the keyboard, because your hands moved away from the keyboard, it can't type, and then it needs to come back to the keyboard so it can type. So I wanted to try to improve that efficiency since I had a very small keyboard, as it were. So I decided to purchase a SwiftPoint GT mouse, and SwiftPoint, the company, actually has many mice now that can be used for purchase for different needs and uses. But I purchased this with my TextBlade, and the benefit that I have of using it is I actually keep it whenever I'm using my TextBlade. I keep the mouse right below the space blade of the TextBlade. So when I'm using the TextBlade and I need my mouse, I actually don't have to lift my wrist or move my hand away from the TextBlade. I literally just shift, use the mouse, and then I come back and I'm using the TextBlade. And so that has been an incredible addition to my workflow. And so this mouse stays with me and I use it with the TextBlade. And I use this combination with my work laptop, my work desktop, and now with the latest iPad OS update, I also use it with my iPad, both of them. And I use it as well for the laptop I'm actually using today for the presentation. So this combination of devices is an incredible combination once you have a TextBlade in your possession. So let's go ahead and go on and talk about an initial overview of the TextBlade. So the first thing I noticed when I received the TextBlade is just how small it is. And most TREG users and other people have noticed that. When it's collapsed, which you can actually store your TextBlade in this closed position, when it comes to you, it's actually in a nano stand, and it's like this when it arrives at your door. This is an extremely small collapsed position. And just as a reference, I actually use as well an Apple Magic Mouse. And so here is the TextBlade that's collapsed next to the Magic Mouse. This is what it looks like when it's on top. And then if I were to turn it on its side, you can see that the thickness of the Magic Mouse is about the thickness of the 3 blades of the TextBlade when they're collapsed. It's very extremely small. As an additional check, what I've brought here is I actually have my library card, which is the same size as a credit card in the United States. And so this is the TextBlade compared to the credit card and just how small it is. It's an incredibly small device. And so when that actually happens, that's the first thing that actually happens with individuals that see me using the TextBlade is they say, there is no way that this device would work for me. The keys are too small. It's too tightly packed. How can you even touch all of the keys and make things work? So I want to provide an additional reference for you. Underneath my lap desk, I actually have my work laptop with me. And so if you notice the TextBlade on top of the laptop, the spacing of the keys here are the same spacing as the laptop keys. It's a 19 mm gap. The spacing between keys is 19 millimeters, and most laptops are between 19 and 19.05 millimeters. This gap spacing is also close to that same here on the side. WayTools actually reduced this on the TextBlade to 17 millimeter, and then it's 10 millimeters here for these outer. This was done to reduce the reach that you have to do. As well, these two fingers tend to be smaller, so they don't need to have as wide of keys. But as you can see here though, it is the same length or the width as a standard keyboard. Now, here's where you notice the big difference. 3 keys tall is 57 millimeters on a standard keyboard. That's the same 19 millimeter spacing between the keys. On the TextBlade, it's actually only 10 millimeters per key. Because there's only one key for all 3 letters, they can dramatically reduce the distance of the spread. So when you're typing, you barely need to move your finger to be able to reach the keys. Something else to notice here is the TextBlade is a ortholinear keyboard. What that means is the keys themselves are straight. The standard QWERTY keyboard that we have today was created based off an old typewriter standard, and they're staggered keys. So when you reach, you're having to reach all over the keyboard to reach the keys you need to press. With the TextBlade and its ergonomic angle here and spread, the angle of the TextBlade here aligns to the natural slope of most arms. My hand doesn't have to twist to the left or to the right or up or down to use the TextBlade. So I have a standard natural feel when my fingers are extended and using on the TextBlade. And also because of that, then my reach is very reduced. So even on looking at this, you can see how much smaller the TextBlade is compared to a normal keyboard. And I'm not even showing the entire keyboard on this screen. The next thing that people always say is there's no way that this keyboard contains everything that's showing on the normal keyboard. The TextBlade actually has more keys available to it than this standard keyboard with out-of-the-box software that comes from the manufacturer. And we will go through that today during this presentation. So let's go ahead and I'm going to put this lap desk back on. And let's go ahead and talk through each one of these sections of the TextBlade, and we'll go into them in detail. So, as you can see, there are 4 unique keys that are on this keyblade, and this is called a keyblade from WayTools. And on the keyblade, you can see the standard QWERTY letters, Q-W-E-R-T, and the rest of the letters in the alphabet that are normally on this set of 5 characters, plus the shift key and the tab key. But you can also see here that we actually have green characters as well, and we'll cover that later on how you reach the green characters and print them. Additionally, you'll actually see that there's some recessed letters here that media, select, edit, and the home row has recessed spaces on it. And this allows your fingers to find and feel without having to look where they should be positioned on the TextBlade to be in the home position. It also lets you feel where the next button is as you're reaching for it, because they have these recesses and lines. So let's talk about the difference of a TextBlade. Because this is one key, your finger press, the TextBlade needs to keep track of where you're pressing on the key. And as you can see, it's a standard press with the butterflies underneath that I will show here shortly. The TextBlade uses capacitance that as you press, it can read the capacitance that's being generated from your finger and the key press with the keycap. And then it can tell, based upon virtual lines that are electronic, that it uses to determine whether I'm wanting to press a T, an R, a V, a B. And it's the same thing that happens on this side. We have the same butterfly, whether it's the small keys or the large keys. And so before I continue, let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So what I've got here is one of the other TextBlades that I have as the extras that I mentioned earlier. And I took off the keycap. And this is the butterfly mechanism that's underneath that keycap. And as you can see, how this works is there's an earthen magnet that is mounted to the TextBlade's base. And when you press the butterflies, there's an intertwined set of metal connectors that connect the butterflies together. And so when you press, it allows the other butterfly to be articulated as well. But then when you let go of the butterfly, the magnet itself attracts the metal base back to its point. And then you can also see then the mechanism at the bottom for the capacitance reading. Here is the keycap that is on there. And there are 4 places that connect to the butterflies to allow the keycap to function. So as we finish our navigation around this keyblade, we have a magnet that helps this connect to the other keyblade, a recess for aligning, and magnets at the bottom that help it connect to the space blade. That provides connection as well as communication to the space blade. So that is one keyblade. If we look at the next keyblade, it also has the same letters, the rest of the alphabetic letters in the QWERTY keyboard. And then it also has more green characters that we'll speak to later. You can also see some additional recessed words, cut, copy, paste. You also have previous word. We have the up arrow and the down arrow, the left arrow and the right arrow, as well as the next word. And we also have the an additional criteria here at the bottom, as well as undo and redo. It also has the same rounded recesses to know where the home key is, with the backspace, the return key, and the shift key. And if we look around this blade as well, the same articulation, the only additional pieces we do have is the same magnetics and connection for the space blade, and the magnet to connect the other key blade, and a recess to allow the alignment. And when this comes down, it magnetically quickly attracts and aligns, and it becomes the key blades that you need for the TextBlade. The last device is the space blade, and it's called the space blade. It actually has a shift key, or it's an articulating key as well that it presses and retracts. And it actually has sensitivity as well for capacitive sensing, that there's 5 sections on the space blade that it can recognize for sensing when you press that can do specific things. The space blade contains the battery that powers the TextBlade. It also contains the Bluetooth module that's being used to communicate with devices, and additional electronics and the computers to help the TextBlade process. It also is spring-loaded, so when you press on it, it has an actuation, and it has a spring and as well another spring that helps it retract when you undo the press. When you look around the edges of the TextBlade, you have the metal pieces of the magnets that connect to the key blades. And the only other two things you actually have here are these pieces on the edge. You have this metal piece here and something in a slot. And this is actually how you charge the space blade. To do that, we have to remove this piece from this compartment. And the simplest way I've found to do that is actually to just tap it against your wrist. And then if you tap it, it comes out, and then you can pull it out. And as you look at that, you're going to find that this is a USB, and this connects to a USB port on a charger. And so if you were to actually bring out your favorite USB charger device, for example, an Apple charging unit, there's the hole that goes into, and these two pins right here are what go into the USB. And so if I look at there, I can push this in. And now to charge this device, I actually just take the space blade, and you're going to see that it actually has these two pieces in the end. And they are magnetic and conductive. And I just connect it there, and the magnets hold the space blade onto the charger, and then it will charge. And so right now it has 90% charge, and I can actually just keep it plugged into the wall, and it will just hang there as it's charging. And then from there, from the charging perspective, when it's done charging, all I need to do is remove it from the nano charger, which is this small device, remove the nano charger from the charging unit, and then I need to replace this into the space blade. To do that, we want to put the metal ends into the hole in the space blade. So I put that in there, and it has a magnet. You'll notice it automatically attracted. As you put it into the hole, you can let go and it'll attract to a certain point. And then you can actually push it in the rest of the way, and then you're done. And that's all it takes. It takes about 1 hour to charge the TextBlade, and you get between 30 and 50 hours of typing, depending upon your typing characteristics, etc. And then you can charge it again. So it's 30 to 50 hours of typing, which could be over days. So for some days, it's 3 to 5 days between a charge, and it's a 1 hour charge. So next, the TextBlade actually comes with a nano stand. And the nano stand, and this is what it's called, it's a nano stand. It's actually, when it arrives, it's a way to store the TextBlade. And so it's actually stored inside as a way to protect the TextBlade and take it with you. I actually use 2 nano stands together to provide extra support for my TextBlade. And it really protects it from dust and incursion of particulates, etc. And so that's the first purpose of the nano stand. The second purpose of the nano stand is it allows you to actually let your phone have a portable stand. I can set the nano stand down, and if I bring out an iPhone, here's an iPhone 5S, old technology, I can actually slip the iPhone 5S into the nano stand, and it actually goes through and provides support for the iPhone, and then I can go ahead and type on the iPhone, and I can read what's on the iPhone. Additionally, I can actually go through and turn the nano stand over, and the back of the nano stand is a non-slip surface that's been adhered to it. And so I can actually place my iPhone 5S on that non-slip surface on my table, and it lets the phone sit at an angle. And you can see that because there's an angle right here on the nano stand. And it's a nice angle to read and actually type on the TextBlade with your phone. This nano stand works with even my iPhone XS Max, as long as the case is off. It's actually not wide enough to work with a case on it, but it actually is a nice enhancement. And so with the case on it, I just use it upside down, and it works very, very well. And finally, before we move on from the initial overview, you'll notice that whenever I put these two key blades together, they quickly come together and stay closed. The key blades have an aligned set of magnets that allow it to do multiple things. One, for storage, it allows it to close. The next thing it does, though, is you'll notice before it closes, I can press the keys. When the magnets come together, it actually presses the keys and collapses them down into a closed state, which actually provides a seal for the electronics under the key and can really reduce the amount of intrusion of dust and other contaminants while the TextBlade is being stored. When you want to take the TextBlade apart, you slide the keys apart. While you could pull, it is not recommended to pull. The TextBlade is fairly flexible. It's a really small device. But if you actually slide it apart by just putting a finger underneath and a thumb on top and then just slide them apart, it comes to get apart very quickly. And then you can see how the magnets make it align. The same thing happens with the space blade. Generally, I put the space blade with the space top against the other two blades. The magnet's a lot stronger, so when you put this down, it adheres significantly stronger. So I find it's plenty to be able to put the top of the space blade on the TextBlade key blade parts, and then you have your device. Okay. To turn on the TextBlade, you actually just connect the space blade to the key blades, and then the lights will light up. It will show you how much battery is in the charge, and now it's actually set up and ready for use. To turn off the TextBlade, one method is to just pull the space blade away from the key blades, and that will turn it off. There's an additional way you can do that by pressing keys on the TextBlade. By default, when it arrives from WayTools, the way to do that is to press the A, S, D, and F keys together. So you'll get 4 lights on your space blade, and then press the backspace key, and that will turn off your TextBlade. And now it's turned off, and even though it's connected, it is not powered on. I can disconnect it and reconnect it. And then it'll power back on at that point. But before then, it would stay powered off until you choose to power it on. So if I go ahead and turn that off again by using A, S, D, F, and the backspace, there is another way that I can turn on the TextBlade. Underneath this WayTools sign, there's actually an electronic accelerometer. And it's measuring to determine if I tap right here. So if you just come up and tap the space blade, it will turn itself on without having to be disconnected and reconnected. So that's another way to turn on your TextBlade. So you can turn it on and turn it off without disconnecting the TextBlade. Now we'll go ahead and go to the iOS app for the TextBlade. The first thing people were going to want to do is, I received my new TextBlade and I want to be able to connect it to my iPad or my iPhone or my Android device. So to do that, I want to learn how to do that. And WayTools has provided an iOS app that you can download, and we were able to download for the TextBlade. I do not believe it's available for general download. It's only available to the TREG users at this point. And when you open your TextBlade app, there's different menus that you can go through and navigate, and we will go through each of these menus as part of this presentation. Well, we can start in the Start menu, and we can go through and then see from that perspective what we do within the Start menu. We get a welcome screen, and the first thing you want to do is pair your device. So if we tap on the Pair section, WayTools provides a quick little video to show how in less than a minute you should be able to pair your device with your tablet or phone. So the first thing you actually need to do is we need to just really quickly talk about jumps. The TextBlade has the ability to connect to 6 unique devices. And those devices are connected to with different Bluetooth slots. And to get to a Bluetooth slot, you press 2 keys together, and that gets you into the Bluetooth slots. So 1 and 2 gets you into slot 1. That's currently my iPhone. Slots 2 and 3 gets you into the next slot, the keys 2 and 3. That's my iPad with QWERTY. 3 and 4 gets the third slot, and that's currently my work laptop. 7 and 8 gets you the fourth slot. That's currently the MacBook Pro I'm using for this presentation. 8 and 9 gets you the fifth slot, and that's what we'll be using for our demo today. And the TextBlade is actually in a seeking mode right now. And then the sixth slot is my work desktop. And WayTools provided me a dongle that I can use that provides an HID Bluetooth connection because my work desktop does not have Bluetooth. And so this slot is dedicated to that device today. But for today's purposes, we're going to use slot 5. And so when the TextBlade turns on and it has a slot that has not been connected to a device, it goes into a search pattern, and it shows you that it's ready to be found and it's searchable when it does this swiping motion with the lights. And so to do that, the pairing talks about that and how you can pair it through here in this process. And let's go ahead and do that today right now with my iPad. So I'm going to go into the settings section of my iPad, and I'm going to press the Bluetooth section. And you're going to see in the other devices that the TextBlade 5, which means the fifth slot, because that's the slot that's open, and then it has an incrementing numeric number afterwards, just to keep track of uniqueness. But to then pair it, I just tap on that device. The next thing that happens is you'll get a 6-digit number that you have to enter. And we haven't even talked about how to enter numbers on the TextBlade yet. But if you can find the number, WayTools has set it up so you can just enter the number in by pressing where you find the numbers, and that's all you need to do. So the TextBlade in pairing mode will actually send numbers whether you enter the number correctly using the layers, the green layer, or if by just pressing the letters next to the number. And then as you can see here now, that was all that was necessary. The TextBlade is now connected to my iPad. And you'll also see that right above it, there's another TextBlade that is not connected right now, but is represented on the list. That's represented by slot 2. So if I actually change to slot 2 by pressing the number 2 and number 3, you'll see that the iPad is now connected to my TextBlade with slot 2. I can switch back to slot 5 as well. And then it toggles again from slot 2 to slot 5. Now, why would you want to connect 2 different slots to the same device? Well, a common thing you can do is I'm using the QWERTY keyboard layout on slot 2. I'm actually teaching myself a new keyboard layout on slot 5. And I've customized my TextBlade so that every key aligns to the new keyboard layout so that I can use one keyboard layout for slot 5 and a different keyboard layout for slot 2. And the iPad just takes care of it by just switching. So there, now I've gotten and I've connected. Now the next thing I might want to do now is later on, let's go ahead and go back to the TextBlade app. I might want to actually change this slot. Let's say that I don't want it connected to my iPad anymore. I want to connect it to my iPhone. Well, right now, the TextBlade has dedicated slot 5 to the iPad, and it won't connect to anything else because this is dedicated to the iPad. So if I want to connect this to a different device, I'm going to need to have the TextBlade forget that it's connected to the iPad. So to do that, the app gives you instructions on how to clear the jump and forget the device. Now, I prefer to forget the device first. So let's go ahead and go back to the iPad's settings and go back to Bluetooth. And the reason I like to forget the device first is I can connect to the slot and I can easily see when it's connected to the slot on my iPad. So I see that it's slot 5 that I want to erase, and now slot 5 is connected to the iPad. So I can touch the I if you have an iOS device, and then I can forget this device. And if I forget this device, it is now not connected to my iPad anymore. And then immediately you'll see that the TextBlade starts blinking slowly. What this means is you've connected to a slot that's dedicated to a device, but the device is not in range or it's not listening. So it has a slow searching. And so you're slowly searching for the device. Now, if I want to forget this slot so that it's no longer searching for my iPad, I can hold down both of the keys for 10 seconds. And that slot will start blinking right here, and it'll blink faster and faster and faster until it does a solid blink of all the lights. And at that point now, this slot is now forgotten that it was connected to the iPad. And you'll see here the lights are now sweeping again in the searching pattern, saying that the TextBlade is available to be connected. And if you look back on the iPad, it actually shows the TextBlade slot 5, and it's now incremented one number to number 5 for a unique identifier to be connected. And because I'm going to be using this for the demo, I'm actually going to go ahead and reconnect that. So I'm going to type the 6-digit number that comes up. And now the TextBlade is again connected. So now we've gone through to explain how to connect the TextBlade to a device, and then how to forget that device by holding down the jump key until it forgets. And then we actually can forget the device from the iPad. Let's go ahead and go back now to, and then now that it's connected actually, let's do some typing. I'm actually going to connect up to my Pages app. And so let's go ahead and actually type in there. I've now got the TextBlade connected. What would we like to type? So as you can see, we've actually connected the TextBlade to the device and it's working correctly. And I can go through and use all the functions of the TextBlade. I can even bring up a TextBlade keyboard to actually use a keyboard on the screen. And I will show that a little bit later in the presentation. To be able to type and see the TextBlade virtual keyboard working to help learn how to use the TextBlade. Okay, so there we go. We're connected and the TextBlade is functional. Let's go ahead and go back to, and for now actually, let's go ahead and I'll erase this. Again, we'll show you that in a little bit on how that works. Let's go back to the TextBlade app now. And from there, after we've done that, we can actually press the start again. And the second thing after pairing is typing. The iOS app actually has its own typing sandbox where you can type and you can see as well the TextBlade typing letters if you want to type information onto the TextBlade. And so that's available to use. I just showed you how to do that same thing very quickly on the iPad, and I'll show that a little further in the presentation. The third thing we can do is explore. How do we type all of the letters that are on a standard keyboard just using the TextBlade and only using 9 keys, the 8 keys of the keyblade and the 1 key of the space blade? This is what we'll learn by looking through the guide. The guide goes through the normal layers and each of the layers on the TextBlade. The way the TextBlade is actually able to work is it uses layers. And we're all used to using layers. We grow up using layers on a standard keyboard. When you press the letter A on a keyboard, it's a lowercase a. It's not until you press the Shift key and the letter A that you get an uppercase A. You've actually entered a layer on a standard keyboard to make an uppercase A. We also use other layers. We use control characters. We use alternate characters. We use combinations of characters. For example, Control Alt Delete. That's a chord that we press on a standard Windows keyboard to go into the unlock screen or to lock this screen. So Control Alt Delete is a chord that we use all the time on a standard keyboard. Well, the TextBlade just uses chords just like that. We have shift layers. We have green layers by pressing the space bar. we have shift green layers, and I will go into these more detail by pressing the shift and the space bar. And then we have additional layers like edit and select by pressing combination of keys on the home row. The iOS app goes through and shows examples of all of these things. Within this as well, you can actually press any character and it will go through and give you an explanation in the blue section of what that character means when you get to more complex characters. Like, for example, this is previous paragraph, or this is end of document. So let's go ahead now, and I'm going to go back and show these in more detail and how we do this and demonstrate each of them. So I'm going to switch back to the sandbox. So we have that for our demonstration. And we're going to go ahead and transition to a different layer so that we can do that. So to begin with, we're going to go look at the Bluetooth jumps. The Bluetooth jumps are set up, as I mentioned before, the 1, 2, pressing the 2, 3, the 3, 4, the 7, 8, the 9, 10, or the 8, 9, and the 9, 0. For the TextBlade to work with a Bluetooth jump, it actually needs 4 pieces of information. It needs, the first thing it needs is it needs to know what operating system it's using, because the operating system can be different between how special characters are used. On a Mac, for example, we have an option key, but on a Windows device, that's the alternate key. We have a command key on a Mac device, and on a Windows device, that's the Windows key. So we have different things that happen, and WayTools with the TextBlade, they set up the TextBlade so it acts differently depending upon the operating system that you need or use. The next thing it needs is what jump slot it's using for the device. And we've already gone through how to connect the device to the jump slot and connect it to the iPad, for example. The next thing it needs is it needs to understand the keyboard mapping. So with these 6 slots that you can use, you can have a separate keyboard map for each slot. So you can have 6 different keyboard maps, and you could be running QWERTY, a Danish, you could be running Colmac, you could be running Dvorak keyboard layouts or a custom keyboard layout on each of the individual devices. And then finally, we need to understand the primary language and whether it's going to be represented in Italian or Danish or US American or UK. And so that's what we need to do for jump slots. And again, just press the 2 together and we can switch. And so I'll switch back over to our slot 5, which we're using for this demo. The next thing are the alpha and shift layers. So if we look up here on the screen, we can go through, and like I was saying before, I can go through and press the lowercase a, or I can press the shift key and get the A. And as you see on the keyboard, in the virtual keyboard on the bottom right, as you press the shift key, you can see the comma, the period, the forward slash, and the single quote change to their standard keyboard layouts of the less than, greater than, question mark, and double quotes. There are 3 unique things about the TextBlade on the alpha and shift layers. The first is that the shift key on either side is actually a sticky key. And what that means is, what WayTools has enabled is that normally when you press and want an uppercase Y, you press the shift key and press Y. And you can do that on the TextBlade. But additionally, you actually don't have to hold the shift key down. You can just tap the shift key and it's a sticky key. And what that means is the shift has been engaged. So the next character you press is now going to be capitalized, or it will represent the character that it's necessary for that shift key. So I can press the Y again and I can get an uppercase Y, or I can press the shift key and I can get a greater than sign, because the shift period is the greater than sign. The benefit of that shift key is that the sticky key is you don't have to wait. Sometimes you're stretching and holding 2 keys together. You can just tap it and then press the next key as you're trying to go through and press characters. Additionally, Over here, because you have characters on the same key as the shift key, you actually can't press Shift O using, or Shift Q using the left shift key. You can't press Shift Z and hold down the shift key and press Z, because the key is being pressed with shift, and so that's all that's represented to the TextBlade. But what I can do is I can tap the shift key and then I can press A, or tap the shift key and press Z. And so that is the first thing, is the sticky shift key. The second thing that we're going to notice is that the backspace does something different in the shift configuration. If I type something and I make a mistake, and I need to correct a spelling error, normally you have to backspace to get to the mistake and correct it. Well, it's actually much faster if you actually erase the entire word and then retype the entire word if I have a mistake, because it's a lot less keystrokes, because I know how to type quickly, and if I make a typing mistake, many times I can erase the whole word and type it over. So the shift key with the backspace is actually delete the last word, and then you can just type it again. So I can delete the word, type it again. And if I make a mistake, delete the word, type it again. So that makes it a lot faster to actually type. So shift backspace is delete last word. The last thing is there are no caps lock keys on a TextBlade. To get to caps lock, you double press the shift key and you get two lights on the space blade, and you can see in the virtual keyboard on your screen on the right, it says it's in caps lock mode. And while you're in caps lock mode, I can type as well. And I can just keep typing letters and I'm in caps lock mode. I can actually even use the shift key when I'm in caps lock mode, and it doesn't actually remove the caps lock if I'm holding down the shift key to holding down the shift key to erase a last word. The only way to remove the caps lock is to actually type. You just press the shift again to remove the caps lock. Double tap to get on, single tap to get off. So that's the alpha and shift layer. The next layer is the green layer. So as we saw before, as we looked at here closely, we have all the characters here in this green layer. And you're actually going to notice that the number keys are on the top row all the way across the TextBlade. The next thing you're going to notice is all of the special characters that you normally reach by pressing shift and the number key are actually on the home row. All of the normal characters that you would normally get by pressing shift and a number are on the home row. So to reach the characters, as mentioned earlier, you press the space blade. And when the light lights up, it's no longer a space, it's the green layer. And as you can see in the virtual keyboard, it switches to the green layer, and you can see all the green characters you can press. So once I'm in the green layer, let's go ahead and clear out what I've typed already. Once I'm in the green layer, I can type my numbers. I can also quickly type my special characters, and I can do that without leaving the home row. So my numbers now, instead of having to reach all the way up here at the top where the numbers usually are, I actually barely have to change the position of my fingers to get to the numbers. And I don't have to change my position at all to get to the characters that the numbers represent. They're immediately available to me by just using the green layer. There's a couple other things about the green layer that are important to know. Some characters didn't reach and weren't made available in the green layer because there just weren't enough characters. So if I combine the green layer, which is the space bar, with the shift key, I actually then get to the last 4-letter characters that have been added at S, D, C, and X. Another thing to note is that in the green layer, the backspace acts differently. If I'm going through and typing, and let's move my cursor somewhere else, if I want to delete forward, the delete key on a normal keyboard, you just press the delete key, and that would delete the number 1 because the number 1 is after the cursor. By pressing the shift key, or the space blade, and entering the green layer, the backspace becomes the delete key. And so I can forward delete characters. And that's in the green layer to go through and do that from the green layer perspective. The other thing that is in the green layer is the home key. As you can see it on the space plate, it's actually green right on there. And the home key allows you, if you're on your iPad, to get back to home or get back to the home. So if I press this, you'll see that your screen on the left behind the TextBlade just went to my home key. And I can flip that back to the TextBlade. And so that's spacebar home key. So those are the two main things about the green layer that you can do, but you can get access to all these characters as well on the bottom row, the plus sign, the minus sign, the equal sign, etc. And you can learn those from there. So additionally then, let's keep moving forward. Now is mod keys. On a keyboard, we have Control, Alternate, Delete. We have Command, Option, and Control. To do that within the TextBlade, we do something similar to what we did at the top for the Bluetooth layers. We actually do the bottom layers. So to get to the mod key for Command is pressing the C and the V together. And there's the Command key. And so you press those two characters together, and when you're up here typing, you just shift down, and now I've got the Command key. And then if I want to go through and do the alternate key, I press X and C. If I want to get the Control key, I press Z and X together. And also, the TextBlade allows for mirroring of that as well. So while I can press Z and X together to get the Control key, I can also press the period and the // to get the Control key. And that makes it helpful if I want to press characters like Control C, because Control C, if I want to press Control C today, that's a mod character. So I can press Control and C to get to Control C. And I also have alternate, and I also have the command on this side. So they're completely mirrored on both sides. Sometimes I actually need to make combinations of mod keys, like Control and alternate. To do that, I press the CX to get to Control, then I press the C, and now I have Control alternate. Or if I need Control alternate command, I can press all 4 keys together. And I can do the same thing on this side. So the issue would be is if I wanted to press Control alternate, I'm actually using the C. So I actually don't get Control C from the left side. The only way I get Control C is to press it from the right side to get the Control key. And now I can press the C character. So that takes us to the next chord that I use, that most common chord we use in Windows, Control, Alternate, Delete. So Control, CX, Alternate, add the C, and Delete, if you remember, was the green layer backspace. So I press the space blade to get the green layer and the backspace. So Control, Alt, Delete is how you get Control, Alt, Delete on your Windows device. I can also do Control and Command if I want to by pressing the C and the V. I can also get Alt Command by pressing the combinations of X, C, V. So those are our mod keys, and they're all in the bottom layer of the TextBlade and easily accessible. The next thing is the edit layers. The edit layer is reached by letting you use arrow keys and move around your data set. So if I'm typing here, I'm going to go ahead and actually remove some characters. And as I'm going through and typing, I can type multiple rows. Okay, so if I enter the edit layer by pressing D and F, the characters on the right side now change to the virtual keyboard that you see below, where as I'm sitting in home row, the I is the up arrow, the J is left, the L is right, and the K is down. And so I can navigate around my data without leaving the home row or barely leaving the home row by just pressing the D and the F. So normally I'd have to move off the keyboard to find my arrow keys or to do other things. Additionally, if you remember, we actually have the cut and the copy and the paste that were in this layer as well. And so we can actually press the D. There's also the All key, and I can press the All key, which is P. It selects all of the letters, and then I can cut. I can also paste, and I can go through and enter and paste again. So I can, from the Home key, with barely moving a finger, I can cut, copy, and paste. And then additionally, I can go through and undo and redo. I can use the undo key and the redo key as well. So from there, the next natural thing you'd want to do is select characters. By adding the S key to the edit layer, so I have the edit layer, and then I add the S, which is what we saw on the keys when we were looking at them before. We saw the two edit layers, and then we saw the select key here, that I can go through and enter the select region. And so now I can select characters, and I can navigate the characters that I want to select. And I can go through and also select the last word, which is U, or the next word, which is O. And so I can navigate by word as well through the document. And I can also then still do the cut and paste, or I can do undo and redo and select all characters. So I can select, move around, and I can also select while I'm doing it. I use these layers significantly in Excel, and they're very beneficial to go through and navigate around Excel to be able to make things function correctly and nicely. Let's go ahead and delete that. The next layer is the edit green layer. So what if I don't want to navigate? Let's go ahead and undo so I can bring that back. What if I want to navigate an entire document? If I add the green layer, which is the space, with my edit layer, now it changes so that instead of navigating word by word, I'm actually navigating to the front of a paragraph and to the end of a paragraph, or to the front of a document, which is the J, or to the end of a document. Or I can search. If I was on Pages, I can search for a word, and then I can navigate through the search command, all the while still using cut, copy, and paste, all, undo, and redo at the same time. And then additionally, if I want to even do more, I can do the same things in the select layer with the green, and now select to the beginning of the document, and then go through and navigate through the selection criteria. So it gives you a lot of ability right in the home row without leaving the home row to be able to do lots of navigation, selections, and criteria. With just learning the arrow keys are your middle, index, and ring fingers. And then you get some additional areas on the up and down of those. And then your index finger for cut, copy, and paste, and your pinky for all, undo, and redo. The media layer. Now, some of you like to listen to music on your device, and the media layer is when you press A, S, D, and F together, and then you get some additional characters like volume control, up and down volume, or mute at the bottom here, and you'll see my iPad at the very top of the screen here turning on and off from mute. I can also go through and navigate through and press different characters to navigate through music, skip, forward, skip back, fast forward, rewind. I can also screen capture a window on a Windows device. I can also screen capture the entire screen using the H, and I can also still paste. Additionally, we already talked about this layer when I first showed you the battery. I can go through and hold all 4 characters, and I can press the P, and I can get the battery level of the TextBlade. And so it's currently at 80%. I can also turn off the TextBlade in the media layer by pressing the backspace in the media layer, and it will turn off the TextBlade. And I can turn it back on again. If I add the green layer, I get the app layer. So on the app layer, it lets me go through with the 4 characters and the space blade. Now I have the app layer. I can switch between Excel sheets using U and O. I can actually navigate up and down the navigation of all the windows. I can scroll between apps. If I want to scroll between apps, like on my screen right now, you can't see it on your screen, but by doing the scroll between apps, it's actually switching, and now it's going to switch to my system menu, as you can see behind the TextBlade app, has gone away. And then I can switch back to the TextBlade app by going through and using the navigation and switch back and forth. And you can do that in Windows and your iOS devices. Function keys. The function section is pressing K and L together. So if you need to reach your functions, it's the same as the number keys. So it's that top row. And I press K and L together. And this is another layer that's sticky. So when I press K and L, it's now engaged the function layer, and it's waiting for me to press the next characters. And that's because 8 and 9 are function keys, and I just press K and L. And as you remember, once you press letters, you can't press other letters at the same time. So that is a lock for function. You do have the ability while you're doing functions to also do shift. So I can do function and shift F2 if I want to. So if I can enable the function key and then press the shift key and do shift F2 or control F2, and you get combinations of the mod keys as well as the shift key while you're still in the function lock. If you need to reach higher function keys than F10, I can hit the function and press the space blade to reach the higher function keys. So that's the green layer of the function, and now I can reach function keys 11 through F20, or F1, 11 through F20. The macro layer, something that isn't on normal keyboards at all. I actually have the capability, and let's go ahead and clear all this out, using J and K together. And if I use J and K together, it actually enables the macros. And I can store combinations of characters on every key on the TextBlade. And so you can see here that I've actually stored data on W, S, D, F, and R. And the way you can tell that is on the virtual keyboard, they've highlighted in yellow. So if I want to, I can just press the W, and we're learning about TextBlade macros, or the S, TextBlade demo hands-on event from this afternoon. Or I can go through and press, and I can also hold down the JK and also press as well. So you can get macros, and I'll show you how to actually set up those macros as we move along here. So finally, let's go through what the on-screen keyboard is. The on-screen keyboard allows you to use this virtual keyboard on your iPad or iPhone screens so that you can actually be learning to type with the TextBlade and see the layers. To access that, you go to the iOS settings, the general keyboard tab, and add the TextBlade keyboard. And then you can switch between them. And let's go ahead and show that very quickly. So I will go ahead and toggle to that by going into the settings. And so in the settings, then we'll go ahead and go into the general, and then you go into keyboard, and then keyboards. And then if you do not see the WayTools TextBlade in your keyboards, you will click add new keyboard, and then you can press the TextBlade. One thing of note, the allow full access actually allows you to be able to use the flight recorder if necessary, if you'd like to. It also allows the iOS app to make sure it's updating the keyboard, because you can customize your keyboard and that new information can make it into the app. So let's go ahead and see what happens when I use it. So if I flip over to this information that I typed earlier at the beginning, I can go through and clear it out by what I just showed, right? Selecting all backspace. To get the keyboard, you press J, K, L, and then the keyboard comes up. You can also toggle between keyboards by pressing Control Space and then using the arrow keys to get to the keyboard you want. So you'll notice here that when I did that, I pressed the ZX together space, and then I quickly got to the arrows so that I can get over to the TextBlade app. And then when the TextBlade app comes up, you can actually then see it's showing what device is connected, the keyboard, and you have the flight recorder. And then as I type, I will get actually the keys being pressed. Let's see here. I might not be on the keyboard. Okay, now we can go back up. So you can see the blue areas being pressed. So as I'm typing characters, and when I hit the space bar, I do get the green layer showing up. So this is a good way to learn if you have an iOS device to start learning the TextBlade and typing in various applications to practice. And so you can get to all the layers using the tech on-screen keyboard. And before we get to setup, which is the next thing we're going to do, I want to actually show you that in that guide, we actually can print this guide. At the bottom center, there's a PDF button, and you can actually press that PDF button, and then you can press print, and you actually get that guide in a PDF format that can be printed to your printer, and then you can use that for practicing and look at that as well. That can be done there. So from there, let's go ahead and go into TextBlade settings. So I scroll down the left here until I come to the settings section, and there are 4 sections in the settings section: features, maps, jumps, and macros. We're going to go ahead and begin in features. In the features layer, this lets you turn on and off various aspects of the TextBlade. So, for example, I can actually turn off the mod keys if I don't want to use them, or the function keys, or macros, or jumps. I don't really anticipate people not wanting to use them, but you have the ability to customize that. And if you want to learn more, there's an I that you can press, and then that brings up and explains what you're turning on and turning off when you turn things on and off. Additionally, the space blade actually has hot corners, as I mentioned at the beginning. When I press the I on the space blade, I don't actually use hot corners on my TextBlade. I've never really needed to. I have plenty of functionality just in the space blade. But some people like to have actually the command key and the alt key immediately available to them. So if you turn on hot corners, you can actually enable this to be command and this to be alternate. On some of the international keyboards, they have extra characters that you can't actually fit completely within the green layer. So they actually enable a left green layer for international keyboards. And additionally, you can actually enable an emoji layer to have your favorite emojis right off the TextBlade without having to open up the emoji keyboard layers. And then the center is always that green layer. I don't use that feature, but it's there and can be turned on. Some additional things now is actually this boundary layer. Boundaries are an interesting thing. I'm going to go ahead and take my TextBlade off here and show you this. As I talked about earlier, there are electronic boundaries between each of these 6 characters. Well, sometimes if you're really used to pressing the enter key and your pinky is always coming up here and you're getting the backspace instead of the enter key more often than not, you might need to give your pinky more room to press the enter key. Well, to do that, that's what boundaries do within the iOS app. So I can go down and say, you know what? I want to allow more space for the return key. And to do that, I can come up here and just give more space to the return key. So I'm going to give more preference to the return key. And what that does is it shifts the virtual line further up towards the backspace. So the backspace gets less access to this key and the return key gets more. Every single border or boundary between every single key across the entire TextBlade is available for consumption in this functionality. And you can adjust it all the way back and forth. I've decided to keep them all neutral so I can just keep learning how to adjust my keystrokes to make that function correctly. The next thing you can go through and do is change your timing. So on the green layer, when you hold down the space blade, you see the light turns on pretty quickly. But if I think it's still too slow, I can actually make the green layer go even faster than it is. Or if it's too fast for me, I want it to go slower because maybe I press the space bar slowly when I'm typing and it's activating the green layer when I really just want the space key. I can change that to slower. If I continue down that, I can adjust all the different layers for fast and slow. By default, the TextBlade turns off in 30 minutes. If I turn this off, it'll turn off in 60 minutes if it's not being used. And there's the one thing I want to demo here, and just because of time, we'll keep moving forward. Below this, there are flight recorders that you can turn on and off. And the flight recorder actually records on the TextBlade's memory keystrokes that you've had, and you can actually send those to WayTools. the WayTools does not receive anything from the TextBlade unless you as a user send it to them. So while it might be recording character keystrokes, it's not going anywhere other than inside the TextBlade memory. But you actually can turn it off if for privacy purposes if you don't want to. And then you can turn it on later if you do want to use it to send information to WayTools. The keyboard extensions allows you to understand and learn more about how to turn on and off the on-screen keyboard, and I went through that already. And then you can factory reset, factory restore key maps, switch accounts, etc. But I'm going to come back up here to the Smart Start. You saw me just several times now start the TextBlade by tapping this screen. I'm actually going to turn off the Smart Start. Let's say that for whatever reason I didn't want to use that. I can turn it off, and then on the upper right-hand corner I can hit the Apply key. And when I hit the Apply key now, it's now immediately communicating. The iPad is communicating with the TextBlade. It's connecting to the cloud because everything stored about your TextBlade is on the cloud in your account, in your private account, so that if the iPad were to lose all of its memory, you still have everything you need for your TextBlade. But in just a matter of seconds now, it's now done all of the setup to change, and it checked all the boundaries and everything that was set up. And now, if I turn off the TextBlade, it will not start back up again. I've actually disabled the kinetic start. And because that's something that I use all the time, I can't even start the keyboard now unless I separate the space blade and connect it back up again. I really don't want that feature to stay on or off, so I'm actually going to turn it back on again and reapply it. Generally, when I'm applying things to the TextBlade, I usually don't like to press any button. When it's doing an application, the LEDs start blinking slowly back and forth, and that means that it's being communicated to, downloading firmware or other key maps, etc. So that's how you know that it's slowly communicating. I usually wait for everything to be done, and I don't let anything touch the TextBlade. And then once the light turns off, it's completed. And now if I turn off and turn on again, it's actually functioning. So now it's actually functioning again as it was expected to function before. So let's go ahead and continue on with the demonstration. And let's go ahead and go down to maps now. In the map setting, this is where all of the customization that can happen with the TextBlade. Within the map section, there's actually 4 windows. There's library, community, custom, and favorites. In the community, it's not yet enabled. This is to allow different TextBlade users to be able to share various maps that they've set up. I primarily use custom and library. The library is the library of key maps that are provided by WayTools. We've got the QWERTY library, the UK, QWERTZ, AZERTY, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, Swedish, Finnish, Danish, multiple keyboards here. And like if we were to press the Danish, we can go through and see that the Danish layer has an extra character on the main layer, alpha layer, AE. And then in the green layer, they have some extra characters as well. And then you'll notice that there's a left green layer, as I discussed earlier about how you can enable the left green layer on your spaceblade to have additional characters. Each of these keyboards have full key maps. We even have Dvorak and a normal Dvorak layer. And we have Colmac in there as a Colmac layer, if you want to learn Colmac. There's also an emoji layer, just in case you want to actually have emojis. You can enable the emoji layer, and then this bottom right corner becomes the emoji layer. And if you want to memorize your favorite emojis to send them in emails and texts, you can do that. Then there's a few extras for Emacs Both and Emacs Pinky. So let's make a custom keyboard because that's what's very important to be able to do. I'm going to start in QWERTY because that's the base keyboard that I use. And to make a new keyboard, I press the Edit key. And once I get to the Edit key, I just need to name my keyboard. So I'm going to name it just Demo. And I'm going to hit Create, which is in the upper right-hand corner. Now, this is my QWERTY demo keyboard. And at this point, I can change any character on this keyboard. I can go through and any single character I can touch, and then I can scroll through the list of characters that exist this blue bar can contain all of the characters that exist that you can actually adjust, and even get to things like F24 if you need it, even though we can only go to F20 right now. I can go through now and I can adjust any one of the layers. So for this, let's just do a quick example. For me, one of the first things I did is I actually like to get my battery level, and I don't even want to have to press A, S, D, F, P, which is what my battery level is. I want to make it even easier by pressing the Shift and the Home key. And as you can see here in the Shift layer, there's nothing there for the Shift and the Home key. So I just scroll all the way to the right, and I tap the battery, and that shows the TextBlade battery level. And now that can be assigned and will be assigned to the slot I pick. And I also like to actually make it so that when I press the Shift green layer, that's how I want to turn off the TextBlade. So I'm going to use that to turn off the TextBlade. And then just finally for this example, I really don't like capital G. I think it should be taken away off the keyboard. I'm going to make it capital O. So anytime I press the capital G key, I'm actually now going to get an O. So that's all the changes I'm going to make, but you actually can go through and change anything you want on this keyboard. So now I want to be able to assign this fancy new key map to the TextBlade slot. To do that, I need to come back to jumps from maps. So there's my maps. If I look at my map now, in the custom section, I'm going to see my new map, QWERTY demo. And if I tap it, it brings it back up again. Something to show you here is there's a PDF button here as well. If I press the PDF button and I press print, it actually makes a one-page printout of my layer that I can print and give me an explanation, which is a really nice feature to be able to print out and help you as you're learning. But I want to assign QWERTY demo to the TextBlade slot 5. So to do that, I'm going to go to the jumps layer, and then I'm going to scroll. Here's all 6 jumps. I'm going to scroll down to jump 5. It has the 5 numeric. And I'm just going to press it. At this point, I need to be able to set up my jump 5. So as we discussed earlier, the first thing we can do, I actually didn't tell you this, is you can name it. I'm going to go ahead and name it iPad Pro Demo. Then, based on the 4 things I said we need to do, first we pick the slot. The next thing we need to do is pick the operating system. And currently there are 7 operating systems on my firmware version of the iOS app that you can pick. And I need to pick iOS. And then from there, I need to pick the key map, and I can press the key map and I can see all the base key maps that come from WayTools. And if I scroll to the bottom, I'll find my QWERTY demo, and I'm going to press that. And then finally, we need to tell it how to interpret the keys being pressed. And here's all the character sets that we actually have. So I'm going to interpret this as US English for my purposes here. So that's all I need to do. And now if I want to, I can just press the apply key, which is on the upper right-hand corner. And now this is communicating with the cloud. It's stored my settings to the cloud, so I have it. And now it's downloading from the cloud through the iPad to my TextBlade. And it's checking all the slots. Most of the slots don't change. It's only really slot 5 that's changing. So it's going through and adjusting jump 5 for both the right and left keyblade. And I can scroll through this and see what it's done. It gives me the serial number, etc. And now it's done. So now if I press slot 5 now, let's go ahead and test that to see what happens. So I'm going to actually flip back to pages. I'm going to actually turn on my keyboard. If you remember right, I have to tap into the pages screen to get the keyboard. I'm going to hit Control Spacebar so I can toggle to a new key. And I'm going to go to the WayTools keyboard. And now I'm going to go ahead and press the Shift bar, the Shift key. And now you can see where it used to be blank before, I see the battery level. And so I can press the battery level. And there we go, it's showing my battery level. And I can press the space shift to get to the green layer, and I can turn off my TextBlade. And at that point, that's when you'll see the virtual keyboard start blinking blue, the Bluetooth, because it doesn't have a connection right now. I'll turn the TextBlade back on again. Turn the keyboard back on. And then I'll do my last thing. you'll see here that when I press the G key, I get a lowercase g. But when I press the Shift key, you'll see now that G is actually says O. So now when I press it, I'm getting an O. And so in that simple example, you can easily see how you can customize every single key and just change it to whatever you'd like to do, and it will work. I'll go ahead and remove all this data. And then let's go ahead and go back to settings. So that's how I do jumps, and you can adjust all your jump slots. So the next thing in settings we want to do is macros. And in the macro section, when you come up, you can actually see and tap any of the characters where you want to store macros, and you can see the macros that have been stored. And just for this purposes, let's go ahead and just remove 1400 from this macro, and then let's just get rid of the demo. And to do that, I just remove all of the letters, and now it deactivates the D. And so I can go through and pick any character, and I can type combinations, email addresses, things that make sense. There is a memory limitation, but it's a fairly large memory that you can store characters. When I'm done with my changes, I can apply it to my TextBlade. And then it applies it to all characters. So there's one set of macros for all jump slots that you can use. I'm going to hit apply. And then it's going to be downloading my macros to the TextBlade. It actually stores the macros inside the keyblade itself. So any macros on letters on this side is stored in this keyblade, and any macros on letters on this side are stored in this keyblade specifically. So now that we're done, we'll go ahead and go back to this, and then let's go ahead and tap in. And then let's go ahead and enter the macro area. You'll notice that D is now gone, and macros is JK again. And I can press W, and I still have that macro. But now, instead of having 1400 hours, the 1400 is gone. And when I press D, I don't get anything. And I can still press F, and I can still press the R. And so now I've been able to adjust the macros. Let's go ahead and go back, and let's continue. So now from there, that's the end of the settings section. And so let's go ahead and go into support. Support is the last section in the iOS app, and there are three sections: posts, tests, and updates. In the post section, this is how you communicate with WayTools. And so there we go. In the last question, in the last session actually, I posed a question to WayTools. They asked how the capacitive sensing works, where when I press, how does it know this is a J? Are the keys conductive, or is it my finger? And I actually already have a response from WayTools, and it says keycaps are polycarbonate, so they are entirely dielectric insulators. They are transparent to read the fingertips above them. The flesh is part of the part conductive due to the saline ions in solution in your blood. So we are reading the fingertips across the air gap between where you are to the sensors of about 2 millimeters, which requires 100 times better sensitivity than an iPhone touchscreen. So there you go. I didn't know the answer to that question, and there we have it. So you can use the post section to ask questions to WayTools. You can also post logs, issues, notes, wish lists. You can post photos of issues and tests to WayTools, and then they can respond. And this actually has every post that I've done since September 2016. The next section is tests. There are actually quite a few tests that I can run on the TextBlade. And to go through that very quickly, I can go through and do a sense test where I can just press some keys, and it actually shows the reading on how it read the letters and the sensitivity of those letters. The next test is a trace test. And I can go through and test the home row, for example. And I can just press the home row keys and actually see oscilloscope readings that show me how I've been pressing the home row keys. The next test is a check. And it just checks the overall TextBlade, so just make sure what's happening. It gives you the firmware, the serial numbers, if calibrations are okay, and any notifications for your TextBlade. The next test is a timing test. And the timing test just goes through and shows you a binary on and off on the keys being pressed. The next test is the power test, which comes very handy. The power test is how you test your battery. So the battery check, it will show you, for example, when the last time I charged my battery. After the first session today, I actually charged my battery. So 12 hours ago, I charged my battery. And I didn't charge it all the way, so I only got it to 90%. So far, I've used 10% of my battery. I've woken up the TextBlade 32 times. It's been awake for 6 hours, and it's been asleep for 5 hours and 30 minutes. So my duty cycle is 55%. And so far, in 12 hours, I've typed 9,240 characters. So as I said before, your battery is between 30 and 50 hours of typing time. So in this example, 10% would be between 3 and 5 hours. So I've used 10% now in 6 hours and 46 minutes. And I've also typed 9,240 characters. So that's the last test. So the last section is the update section. And this is the main way you get firmware updates. WayTools can actually send you firmware updates directly to you specifically through posts. And then you can update the firmware directly from posts. But this is the primary method of getting firmware. And we're a beta tester, so we can tap into the beta, and then you can see the firmware that's been sent to the beta testers. And you can tap that firmware and then update the TextBlade. Due to the NDA, and we've been asked not to go through and show the information that's in each of the firmware updates. So I won't tap that, but I've used that many times to tap this and then install firmware updates. My TREG TextBlade issues. So initially, one of the first things that happened early on is I was getting misreading keys. I spilled something on my TextBlade, and I got a sticky key as well, where the key wasn't pressing consistently or cleanly. And so when that happens, you're getting dirt underneath, you're getting something underneath the TextBlade, and it's causing issues with the TextBlade. So to fix that, the easiest way to fix that is actually to take the keycap off. And so if you actually, I'll go through and show that on another TextBlade key. The way I do that is I press the keys around that I don't want to take the key off, so they get out of the way. And then I actually put my thumb on the bottom of the key, and I'm providing some support for it. I'm really pushing down with my upper keys, and I gently press, but firmly, until I hear a gentle snap. And what that is it's the butterflies disengaging with the keycap. And then I can gently slip the keycap off. My goal in taking off keycaps is to make it so that the butterflies continue to properly actuate. And so if I've done a good job of taking the keycap off, the butterfly is still engaged. But at this point, I can actually take the keycap, the butterfly off. I do that by using my fingernail on this nub right here, and I just gently pull out, and it'll slide it and slip it out of its holding slot, these two slots right here at the bottom. At that point, now I can clean right here at the bottom and clean off any junk that might be in there. And I can also clean the underside of the key cap that might be dirty. There is special care needed though. There is some lubricant in these four corners where the key cap connects to the butterfly. There's also some lubricant in these two entry points. They're not actually needed purposefully in the TextBlade, but they do make it feel nicer when you're typing. So you want to try to make sure that you don't clean underneath those spots. And if lubricant does come out, you want to clean off the lubricant because that'll affect the sensitivity of the capacitance readings. When you're all done cleaning it, we need to put it back together again. So to put it back together again, there's two sides to the butterfly. You actually want to have the side down that has the bumps. There's a bunch of bumps on the bottom. You turn it over. Now to make the butterfly work, you actually have to intertwine. There's a fat section and a thin section of each butterfly. You need to make sure that the fat section of the butterfly is underneath the thin section of the butterfly. And that's what allows pressing one butterfly wing to get the other butterfly wing to go down. So to do that, I found a very easy way to go through and do that is that I actually I put one in all the way, and then I press it down. And then what I do is I actually put this butterfly in its slot and make sure that the fat part is underneath the skinny part. Then I let go of my left butterfly, and then I can gently slip the right butterfly, well, let's go through and do that, in, and then gently press. And then it brings it in. And so before I ever put the keycap back on, I want to make sure that when I press each side, it retracts the other side. If you haven't done it correctly, then what'll end up happening is one side won't retract, and then you have to practice again. But that's where I've found that pressing this down, putting the fat side underneath the thin side in its slot, and then after I release this, I can just gently push it to the beginning of the slot and then slip it into the slot, and then it works. Then finally, to go ahead and put the keycap back on, it's easier if you first engage one half of the keycap. So if we look here on this side, I want to go through and try to get the slots here on the keycap on these two nubs of the butterflies. So I do that as an angle, and a lot of times I do that when it's sitting on the table. I do that at an angle until it connects and I'm feeling it because I can slip it up and down and it doesn't slide. Then I just gently press, and then the other side of the keycap will engage with the nubs, and now I'm connected. And that's actually what I did for this demonstration. I told you at the beginning that I had 2.5 TextBlades. So this is actually the TextBlade I've been using for 2.5 years consistently. But these keycaps weren't part of this TextBlade, this keyblade, until about 5 or 6 days ago. What I decided to do is I took these keycaps off of this keyblade. So I took all of the keycaps off of the TextBlade I've been using for 2.5 years. And then I took all of the keycaps off of this keyblades I've not been using, and I swapped them so that I can have brand new keyblades on my TextBlade to make it refreshed and make it feel newer. And then because of that, I can also show you that after 2 years of use, the paint starts wearing off the TextBlade and the green layer starts wearing off. I know WayTools is working on new paints, but you can see the wear and tear on the keyblade. It still works just fine, you just don't see the letters anymore. And then on the new one, you can see that it's nice and shiny still. So that's the thing to go through and do if you need to clean it, to just take the keycaps off very gently. And if you do accidentally, the most common thing that can happen that damages the butterfly is that here on the base of the butterfly, this nub breaks off, or this nub breaks off when you're trying to disengage the keycap. And if that happens, WayTools does provide 4 butterflies in the packaging for the TextBlade, just in case you do damage something so you can switch it out. So the next issue that I was having was intermittent keyboard issues. So sometimes, for whatever reason, the TextBlade will just not switch Bluetooth layers, or I'm trying to do something and it's just not responding correctly. Every once in a while it happens. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. So WayTools enabled on my TextBlade, that's currently not on every TREG TextBlade yet, but will be at some point, and for the general release, the ability to reset some of the modules of the TextBlade without resetting the entire TextBlade or having to turn it off. To do that, we press both shift keys at the same time for 3 seconds until all the lights light up and they stay lit. Then I can let go and those modules have been reset. So just that quickly, I'm able to reset several of the modules within the TextBlade. And in the last 2 years, since I've had that functionality enabled on my TextBlade, that has cleared every problem I've had on my TextBlade. Anytime I have an issue, I just press the 2 shift keys and that issue is resolved. So that's a great feature that WayTools added to just reset some of the most common modules that might just, I mean, it's a computer. It's running a lot of software to go through and make sure your keyboard works. it can get hung up. The next thing that happened is I actually got a bad nano charger. So I received, this isn't it, I sent it back to WayTools, but the nano charger, for whatever reason, was not allowing the device to charge. I put this into the Bluetooth and it just wouldn't charge the TextBlade, so I had to send that back. I also, broken nano stands, something that happens. They're, they do have weak points, and so they do have things where those can be broken, and they can be replaced by WayTools. And WayTools did build a stronger nano stand, but even the stronger nano stands can break. And let's go ahead and finish up the presentation and come back to me. So some of the other things that actually happened was at the beginning, early on in 2017 with my TextBlade, I started getting a la-la state. I called it a la-la state myself. My TextBlade, when it went to sleep, when I would wake up, it wouldn't do anything. I could not get it to respond. And that's before we had these soft resets on the TextBlade that I just explained, and some of the other functionality that WayTools has provided to us. I called it the la-la state when I was communicating with WayTools, and I had to work with them for quite a while to figure out what was going on. And they were able to make some adjustments to the firmware, and I was able to send back my TextBlade and get a new one. And they even referred to that in one of the broadcasts that they said that we're working on the la-la state. Additionally, USB 3 has a pretty noisy interface, and my work desktop uses USB 3. And it was having significant interference with the Bluetooth dongle that I was using with the TextBlade. So I worked with WayTools quite often over a period of time to fix that. We ended up having to get ferrite cores to put around it. I had to separate the dongle from the desktop so that I can go through and have it separated to give it more space. And I did all those things so I can make my desktop work very smoothly at work. And I've had those things enabled on my desktop over the last year, and it's been about 2 years now that it's been set up on my desk, and it works great. But I had to work through with WayTools on that. Finally, through all my issues over the 3.5 years that I've been a TREG participant, I've had a lot of interaction with WayTools, and they've been really easy to work with TextBlade issues. And I understand people's frustration in the sense of not having a general release, and that's very frustrating for me as well as a customer. But I have been able to work with WayTools quite closely off and on issues that I've had where they're really engaged on trying to fix the issues of the TextBlade. And I haven't really had a lot of issues over the last 2 years. And I know that they're working on things, but I, for me, have not had a lot of issues with the TextBlade. So some final thoughts. I love my TextBlade. As you can see from my enthusiasm, I love this device. I use it all the time. I use it daily. I use it throughout the day. It's a very well-made keyboard that will meet a lot of people's needs if it can get to general release. I wish it was for sale right now at Best Buy or your local electronics superstore, that any person could purchase this device and use it on a daily basis. Currently, WayTools is working on rewriting the firmware. Some of the issues they were having were taking up too much space on the firmware to fix them, and it was causing them to have to rewrite various modules of the firmware. So they're going through a complete rewrite, where recently they said it was over 90% done. I have no idea when that rewrite is going to be completed. I do realize that after the firmware is completely rewritten, it will have to be provided to the TREG users to test, to make sure it's working well, and any other issues that have come up before a general release. I have no idea when general release is going to happen. And because of that, if someone were to ask me today, with my good conscience, I would say, don't pre-purchase the TextBlade. Wait for it to be released, wait until it ships, and I have no idea when that will be shipping. So with that, I would like to go ahead and go to the Q&A. And so we'll go ahead and go to the Q&A, and we'll find out if anybody has any questions. I'll go ahead and look to see what Q&A that we've had from participants that I will cover first. So the first question I received asked, can the keyboard be used without the charger in place? So without the charger. So I'm assuming that the charger would be the nano this right here. And yes, the keyboard can be used without this being inside the key slot. That is not required for it to be there. And so you don't have to have the nano charger there, but to use it. And I'll go through and show that if I take that out and put that on. It does turn back on and use appropriately. So you could keep this inside of your charging unit and charging base unit. For me, I just asked for an extra one. And so purchasing a few extra of these so that you can have them available at home. But for me, I like to actually keep it with me. And so I like actually keeping it there so that anytime I need to charge it away from the house or at home, I can quickly just take that out and use it. That's a great question. Thank you. What are the lights on the battery pack indicating? And yeah, so there's different light signals: battery level, searching for Bluetooth, communicating and downloading where it's slowly blinking back and forth. You also get light indicators for the layers, as well as the various combination of characters you stroke. And let's see here. How long did it take you to become comfortable enough with the TextBlade to use it as your daily driver? I actually, the day that I received the TextBlade, I started using it. And there's actually a fairly long blog post on the WayTools forum that I posted on my daily life when I started using this. I think it was, I'd have to go back and look, but I want to say that within a week, I was only using the device, even though I was not perfectly smooth. And there were a few times where when the rubber hit the road and I had a major time crunch that I stopped using it, went back to the keyboard. But it's been almost 3.5 years since I've really used a main keyboard. Now I can still use a regular keyboard as necessary. And I find that I can still switch back to it and type quickly. It's not really painful to go back and forth between QWERTY on here and QWERTY on a keyboard. So that's really nice that I can still use the normal keyboard to do that. But it did take me a couple of weeks before I was doing it. And I said I'm trying alternate layouts. So I wanted to learn Colmac, but recently I actually found a very unique layout called the -1 layout. I'll put notes in the YouTube video for anybody who's interested, but it actually does something different where it puts keys that are connected together close. So you actually get A, T, H, E right here. So you get so you can type the really quickly. You just go prep and you get a splat of the. And it puts IONS on this side. So you can type like nations and things like that. So I'm using the one. I know of other people that pick Colmac and Dvorak as well as QWERTY on there. So my favorite customizations, that shift home for the power and the turn off is the primary one that I've done significantly. I slightly edited the layers here for the select and edit for page and column for Excel to be able to navigate. I use shift home a lot, shift end, control shift up, control shift down to select the entire row. And so I just made those that were very quick to do. Is the keycap made of conductive material? How is it sensing the capacitance? That's a great question. I actually can't answer that question for you. I do not know actually if the keycap is capacitant, whether it's the finger itself as opposed to being adjacent or close to the material at the bottom, that it's your finger that's providing that capacitance, or if it's the keycap with it. So what I can do for the person who asked that question, I will go through and pose that question to WayTools, and I will post that, I will send that to you individually and answer that question for you. And then I'll put that in the YouTube video as well. Can you propose new TREG users? Yes, you can. When you pre-purchase, you can propose, you can ask to be a TREG user. I say TREG and TREG sometimes. And unfortunately, I think there's probably 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500 people that have actually done that as well. So I think WayTools has tried to limit it to some degree so that they can communicate heavily with a smaller number of people. But I do believe it's over 100 TREG users right now globally. I don't know how many are heavily active and communicating. I only communicate directly with maybe a half a dozen TREG users, maybe a dozen. What are the customization options for the SpaceBlade? So yeah, so it has 5 tap areas. And so one of the other TREG users today was saying actually that the instructions on the TextBlade app might be wrong, to where I can get command here and edit, but then I can actually enter two things here. So right now, I believe it's possible that the international green layer is right here, but maybe not. And so I don't know for sure. I've actually never used any of the hotkeys on the SpaceBlade. I find that I have enough up here that I don't need to add extra layers here. So I only use the space bar to enter the green layer, and that's it. But I do know that you have the three for the emojis and the green layer, and then over here, the command. There's also the international green layer, but I can ask that question to find out from that. How would you compare the key feel to a mechanical keyboard? So I can compare it actually. I like this key feel actually better than any other keyboard that I've used. You know, I don't really like the new MacBook Pro or the old MacBook Pro where it was so close that you barely, I'm typing on it right now, you barely press anything and you get it. I actually like the distance that this travels, and it's not a huge clicky. You get a clack, but it's not a really strong spring-loaded clack. But it's a very comfortable feel, and it flows, and I can hear it. So I really enjoy it. I have used many other keyboards as well over the years. Now, because of the TextBlade, I really just use the laptop keyboard, or every once in a while at work, every once in a while I'll pull out the keyboard that came with the desktop and plug it in if necessary. Ergonomic. You know, what's funny is that ergonomic wise, within 1 week, my carpal tunnel was gone. It was gone. I had serious carpal tunnel in this wrist, and it was painful all the time at work. For the last 3.5 years, I've had zero carpal tunnel. This angle here is meant specifically to do an angle that helps you align your arm and wrist. So if you actually just look at your wrist angle, if you just put your angle down, you pretty much line up to where you're not twisting. If I slide this way, I'm not twisting my wrist at all. I just have a very natural, neutral position of my arm down to my wrist, down to my fingers. And because of that, and because of the very reduced stretch, your fingers don't have to move very far. The ergonomics is significant from that perspective. And I can type all day. I've spent, in the last week, I had a 42-hour workday. And in that 42 hours, I was on this almost nonstop. The entire 42 hours, no uncomfortable at all on my fingers. And finally, is the PDF of the layers available to download for non-TREG users, or non-TREG users? That's a very good question. It seems like there's no reason why it shouldn't be. I'd have to ask that. I don't have any way to go through and confirm that, but I'd find out from WayTools, but I'm sure that I can actually post the main ones because that's on the forums today. People post their layouts all the time. So maybe on the YouTube, let me make a note right now for the YouTube video, I will actually post the layouts for QWERTY that I'm using, the base layout for QWERTY, for all the layouts, and maybe Colmac, and for the Vorak as well. I really want to thank you for your participation today, and thank you for the questions. Listening to me for 2 hours go on and on about a keyboard that I love that you can't purchase, which is, it makes me upset and frustrated that that's not available to you. But I do want to let you know that I try to do everything I can to communicate with WayTools when I have issues, to try to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And even when there's times when it's very busy, I'm not communicating with WayTools as often. I do try to make sure I keep track of what I've found so I can communicate. But I do want to thank you for your participation today. Over the next several days, I will make a composite video, and I will go through and post that to YouTube with the Q&A so that people have the Q&A at the end as well. And I'll probably put the question text in the YouTube video, so it might take a little longer so people hear the questions that were asked. I will send you a link individually to your emails so that I won't be sharing emails to anybody else that you registered with. And so you will get a link to the YouTube video just as I post it, before I post it on social media. And I hope this was helpful, and this brought some answers to maybe some of you who might have been interested in the TextBlade for a long period of time, but who haven't seen a lot about it. I think I've looked around and I haven't found anything in public sphere with this much detail about the TextBlade. And I'm not doing it as to try to promote the TextBlade, to try to get people to pre-purchase, just because I'm excited about it. I still am after 3.5 years, and I like sharing it. I'm glad I was able to share with people, and I hope it was helpful. Finally, I really do hope for a day when I can finally get the TextBlade I purchased, and not the ones that are on loan to me from WayTools. My shiny device that I can loan to a friend and let them use it, and be able to actually let them try it out themselves, where I can't say, oh, well, that's a loaner from TextBlade, WayTools, I can't loan that to you. You can't use that, I'm sorry. You can play with it here in front of me, but I can't let you use that for a day or two. So I hope for that day that that will happen, and then it's available, and then I will be a huge proponent of this. And I hope that that day is sooner than later. And with that, if there is nothing else, I'll make sure there's no other questions. So go ahead and pose your question.
Hi, not a question, just I want to speak out my appreciation for you doing this. I mean, it's, I know a lot of effort went into preparing these sessions, so thanks.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That just brings chills to me right there. That makes it all worth it. The many hours and very little sleep that I've had over the last 2 weeks learning how to do all this stuff. I didn't even know how to do a presentation online other than for work. And I don't even share my video on work calls. And I'm in Zoom sessions 9 hours a day, 4 days a week with work. And so it's been a good experience for me. And I really appreciate that it was helpful for you as well. Thank you. So with that, I will go ahead and end that presentation. And thank you so much for your participation. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And goodbye.